Good evening, everyone. I'm Janet Routledge. I'm the MLA for Burnaby North, and I'm hosting this virtual town hall on workplace safety during BC's Restart Plan. I know you're joining me from all over the province, different territories throughout the province. I'm here on the traditional unceded territory of the Coast Salish people, along with our ASL interpreter, Nigel Howard. And today I have two very special guests joining me, Labour Minister Harry Bains and the Head of Prevention Services at WorkSafeBC, Al Johnson. Welcome, everyone. The COVID pandemic affects us all as British Columbians, be we business owners, employees, customers, or community members. As businesses start to reopen this week and in the weeks ahead, we want to make sure everyone feels supported by the province. Minister Bains and Al Johnson are here to answer your questions about workplace safety as we navigate our way through Phase 2 of BC's Restart Plan. Here's a quick overview of how the next hour will unfold. First, Minister Bains will start us off with some brief comments, followed by Al Johnson. For those of you who have questions to ask and were unable to submit questions ahead of time, you may submit questions in the comments section of the live event here on Facebook. We've already received a lot of questions, 126 in fact. So we've grouped them by theme so that everyone's questions should be covered as much as possible. For those coming in live this evening, those questions coming in live this evening, I'm going to leave some time at the end of the meeting, and we'll get to as many of them as possible. So let's get started. Minister Bains, over to you.
Thank you, Janet, and good evening to everyone. And I'd like to begin by acknowledging the Coast Salish people territory that I'm located on, including Kwantlen, Semiahmoo, and Katzie. I want to thank everyone for connecting with us tonight and sending questions. We know some businesses are beginning to open their doors, and in doing so, they are working hard to keep their workers and customers safe. The province is committed to working alongside you. And that's why we are here tonight, to help answer questions about BC's Restart Plan and what it means for workplace safety. This pandemic's impact on workers, consumers, their families, it keeps many of us in government up at night. But I'm proud of the way British Columbians responded to Dr. Henry's guidance. We have all stepped together to do our part to stop the spread of COVID-19. BC's Restart Plan lays out the next steps, a careful reopening while protecting people and all the progress we have made. For my ministry, that means working closely with health officials, businesses, and labor organizations as we begin to gradually open up our economy. It also means working in stride with WorkSafeBC. As you mentioned, Al Johnson is joining us here tonight to help us answer those questions, to ensure that everyone going to work have support that they need. WorkSafeBC has developed general and industry-specific restart guidelines. These materials are a key part in careful, phased plan to help reopen the economy in British Columbia. And I'm grateful for the staff at WorkSafeBC who have been rising up to support our province as we move through this pandemic. My goal as Minister of Labour has always been to make BC the safest place to work. This has never been more important than now. I look forward to tonight's conversation and providing answers that will help British Columbians safely navigate through Phase 2 of BC's Restart Plan. Thank you very much. We may not have all the answers here tonight, but we'll try our best. But we will leave you with WorkSafeBC's lines to contact, their website, to contact them if you have any specific questions to your particular needs. We'll try to answer as many as we can between myself and Al, But if you still have some questions left, we couldn't answer here tonight, feel free to contact WorkSafeBC. Those are the people that have worked hard in the last few weeks to put those guidelines together. Those are industry specific, but we all know that the different sectors have different industry, different sizes of businesses. So we will try to help each one of them as much as we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. And now, Vice President of Prevention Services at WorkSafeBC, Al Johnson.
Thank you, Janet. And Minister, thank you for your comments. Good evening, everyone. It's already evening. As Minister Bains had commented, and further to those opening comments, I would just like to say that at WorkSafeBC, we certainly recognize the importance of getting British Columbians back to work. But we also recognize that getting them back to work has to be done safely. And that is the business that we're in at WorkSafeBC. We want to ensure that every employer in the province meets their obligations, meets their responsibilities, and ensures that their workers that are in their work sites are protected and are safe as they need to be from COVID-19. So this means that a new risk called COVID is in our workplaces, and that risk has to be managed as all health and safety risks do. And so at WorkSafeBC, we are there to assist employers, to help employers manage that risk and develop their COVID safety plans. You will hear more about that tonight. We'll have questions on that. But in essence, WorkSafeBC has prepared on our website a vast amount of material, best practices, guidelines that can be utilized by employers in the province in working with their own workers to develop site-specific COVID safety plans that they can implement in their workplaces so that when workers go back to work and workplaces reopen, it's done safely. And that's what we want from a WorkSafeBC perspective, in harmony with the government and many of the other health and safety associations and employer associations that we've been working with to create these materials. It's important that workers feel safe. By extension, the public will feel safe. And if workers do not feel safe, if employers have questions, if the public have questions, WorkSafeBC is there to be contacted, to provide assistance, direction, support, but also we're there as a regulator. And we will hold employers accountable to ensure that their workplaces are healthy and safe and the proper protections are in place for prevention of COVID disease.
Thank you, Al. And now let's turn to the questions from people all across the province. The first question we have today is for Minister Bains, and it comes from Sandra in Langley. What are the safety guidelines for most places opening, restaurants, etc.? Is there a place for us to report any not following them?
Absolutely. And as I said before, and Al has mentioned, that WorkSafeBC, working very, very closely with provincial health officers' guidelines, they have created guidelines for different sectors that are opening up going forward in phase 2. Now, again, like I said, they are guidelines for each sector. Now, within each sector, there are different industries, different size of operations. One size fits all is not the approach we are taking. It's a built-in, created right here in BC to suit our needs. Each individual business will require to have a safety plan for their operations, suitable for their needs. Because, for example, if you take for example, there are operations that are large in nature, have a higher and larger capacity compared to a same business next door or next block who have a smaller operation with a smaller capacity. So each employer then is asked to build from the guideline that they get from the WorkSafeBC their own plan, and then share that, work with their employees to ensure that their workers are brought alongside and the workers feel safe going to that work. But more importantly, I think also is that it's up to us and the businesses working together with the help of WorkSafeBC and provincial health office following those guidelines, then we win the confidence and trust of the customers who will be patronizing those businesses. And if they have your confidence, they'll come and patronize your businesses and support your business. So I think that's what it is. But if you feel that someone isn't following the guidelines, they can phone the helpline, the prevention line at the WorkSafeBC. And the line is, I will give that number right now. It's a 1-888-621 and then SAFE. Sorry, 1-888-621-SAFE. Dial that number. You will have a live person speak to you and guide you and help you whatever needs that you may have in that particular question.
Thank you, Minister. And Al, perhaps you can answer the next question. It's from Lisa in Aldergrove. And of course, Minister, if you want to add anything after Al's answered, you're welcome to. The question is this. With the opening of restaurants, couples are wanting to have date nights again. My teen has been asked to babysit outside of our home. What are your recommendations for keeping her safe?
Good question. I can certainly appreciate, as many can, that couples want to get out. And of course, teenagers, they want to get out as well, whether it's babysitting or otherwise. I think I would suggest that we need to reflect on the advice and the guidance of the PHO, the Provincial Health Officer here, around maintaining your own safe bubble. And I think, not to put words in their mouths, but I think the idea is that you have a bubble, people that you're close to right now that you're with, and as you go outside of that bubble, the risk of potential exposure to someone who could be have COVID increases. And so you have to be careful of going outside of that bubble, but where you decide and make a decision that you will go out and babysit, then you're entering into another bubble. And I think the general principles apply here of good, sound COVID prevention. And that is lots of hand washing, lots of sanitizing surfaces and that sort of thing, as well as trying to maintain some physical distance between those people that you're now looking after or babysitting. If you could do it outside in a nice sunny afternoon, that would be ideal. But I think those general principles to minding other people's children or entering into another family's home are what you have to keep in mind. On our website and also with the PHO, there are some guidelines around childcare. Those are more intended for childcare facilities, but there may be some information in there that you could glean on that particular subject as well as teenagers go out babysitting.
Thanks, Al. Harry, do you have anything to add?
No, I think that is a very good, thorough answer. And just follow the instructions of our provincial health officer. We're so fortunate to have Dr. Bonnie Henry around to guide us and prepare those guidelines for us in different settings and different sector. And I think if you could just go online, as Al have said, and look at what specifically you're looking for in order to protect yourself, I think that will be very, very helpful.
Thank you. The next question comes from Michelle in Victoria. And Minister Bains, if you could respond to this one. The question is, how will the province ensure that schools are being cleaned to the required standard?
It's a very good question. I can tell you, as a grandparent and my grandkids, parents are really worried. And so are many people in our society, whether the steps that we're taking are safe for themselves, for their children especially. And when we're opening up schools, they are worried. And I understand that. And I think that's why, number one, it's not a mandatory that you must send your kids to school if you don't feel safe. So it's optional. That's the one thing. The second thing is that the WorkSafeBC, working very closely with Provincial Health Office and the Ministry of Education, have developed guidelines for each school district. And each school district has to come up with the guidelines to follow, both from the WorkSafeBC guidelines and the provincial health officers, to ensure that those guidelines are followed through. There are many steps that they could be taking. I'm advised that they are looking at limiting the number of students in school, avoiding groups of gathering of students in hallways, for example, or other common areas where students are normally gathered. They're also looking at regular cleaning of high contact surfaces like doorknobs, toilet seats, keyboards, and desks. And then you're looking at students and educators and staff will be required to clean their hands before entering school property. A staggered drop-off and pick-up, lunch and recess breaks. Staff and student, their parents and guardians will be asked to assess themselves daily to ensure that you don't see any signs or feel any signs of COVID-19. I think that's the kind of detailed safety plan that each school and school district is required to follow. And if we follow those, I'm sure that our children will be safe. And it is an exciting time for many children. They were sitting home and they wanted to go out there and be with their friends. And the social interaction, as experts has been saying to us, is very, very important for our young children to develop. And I think that's the opportunity they will have. Again, the parents will have a choice whether to send their children to school or not. And to ensure that their health and safety is protected by looking at those guidelines, that the schools will be sharing that with the parents and the support staff and the teachers. So I think that's why it is important to learn what those safety guidelines are, what the safety plan is for your school. Ask questions if you're not sure, and then if you feel that the more need to be done, don't feel that you don't need to ask questions. Ask those questions. We encourage you to ask those questions, and it's only when you feel confident that your child is safe at school that you want to send their child. I'm telling you, a lot of my friends, my grandkids, they are going to school and they're excited about it. And so I think that's why the Ministry of Education, working closely with WorkSafeBC and Provincial Health Office, have put those guidelines together, and we are expecting all of them to follow. And of course, there are going to be some gaps. But as parents, we should be identifying those gaps, reaching out to WorkSafeBC or the Ministry of Education or your sure that those gaps are dealt with and make sure that the safety of our children, their support staff, the teachers is maintained.
Thank you, Minister. The next question is for Al, and I'll read it out. I am getting a lot of questions from small business in particular, and ask if you would please consider and support collaboration with the industry safety associations and through public promotional awareness of this critically important partnership in prevention.
Good question. Certainly, health and safety associations, partnership with them and collaboration with them is important for us at WorkSafeBC. I think that awareness is key to, it's the first step in understanding what responsibilities are for employers and workers, as well as the public, and awareness is important. We at WorkSafeBC just today initiated and began a public awareness campaign that all public, all workers, all employers will start to see. This includes television, digital, social media awareness. That really speaks to the importance of a workplace health and safety is contributing to a safe and healthy British Columbia. And it's important that we get messaging out there to raise the level of awareness, where people can go to get questions answered, where they can actually see themselves on our website to gain information, and our social awareness campaign, our media awareness campaign that, again, I say is just rolling out today, will be with Global and CTV as well as CBC, as well as many of the social media platforms. You'll start to see that level of awareness increase, and people will know where to go to get their questions answered.
Thank you, Al.
Janet, on that one, I think, the health and safety associations have a tremendous amount of resources and expertise in the particular area that they represent. There are about 12 or 13 health and safety associations all across the province. representing different sectors of the economy. And as such, they have acquired vast knowledge of health and safety, knowledge in that sector, and then they are the source of providing that the support and education and awareness to their members. And I think working together with WorkSafeBC, they are great help for their members. So I just want to say thank you. They are playing a pretty good role out there, really excellent role.
They are, Harry. Thank you for that. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you to both of you. And the next question is from Jennifer in Burnaby. And Minister Bains, if you could answer this one. Please address employees being able to work from home and the benefits on preventing the virus.
I think this is one of the suggestions that came right early on by Dr. Bonnie Henry, that if you can work from home, if you have the capacity, your operation have capacities to work from home, do so. And many actually took up on that opportunity, and many employees stayed home and worked from home. I think that was a hugely beneficial to help us curb the wave of COVID-19 and spread of COVID-19. And I think many people are starting to realize that this is a new way of doing business, and they are actually adopting this method of providing service or producing products, whatever the business that the businesses may be in. So I think that's a really good way of helping in curb the COVID-19 spread. So it's a great way of doing it, and we encourage it as much as possible wherever the operations can and the businesses can support them.
Thank you, Minister. Al, here's a good question for you, and it comes from Donna in Seashelt. Where do I get face shields and disposable shoe covers and gloves? Impossible to get in stores.
There's absolutely no doubt that we have been a little bit challenged in weeks gone by with obtaining personal protective equipment of all sorts. I think we're over that hurdle now. Certainly in healthcare, they have what they need. That's been spoken to and demonstrated, and they are the most important to have the most sophisticated, if you will, types of PPE that the average person doesn't need. So I would go back to some of the basic principles. Really look at what PPE do you think you need, or is your employer saying you need in your workplace, and really look at that through a critical lens to be certain you need that PPE. You don't need to go out and buy gloves and a mask and shoe covers if really they're not needed. So look at that, and our website can offer some advice in that regard. But where you need to obtain PPE, many of the suppliers in the province now are stepping up. They have availability, whether it's a medical supplier, whether it's a safety equipment supplier. They have the availability, and then there's been some ingenuity on the home front. Masks are being made by various manufacturers, cloth masks I'm speaking to here, and being sold through the internet websites and by donations to other groups as well. We've seen that. And hand sanitizers. Many of the distilleries in the province and other manufacturers have stepped up and started making hand sanitizers, and those are available now in grocery stores, and they're being marketed much better. So I think you'll find the availability of these this equipment and sanitizers are more so today than they were in the weeks gone by, and you should be able to find those things that you actually need.
Thank you, Al. Minister Bains, Wendy from Vancouver asks, with rising incidents of hate crime, should employers provide racial sensitivity training?
First of all, Wendy, thank you very much for raising this question. Hate has no place in BC or anywhere in Canada, in British Columbia. I am saddened, and I'm very concerned about the recent increase in hate crimes. Discriminating against others or blaming others is not going to protect us from this virus. Many people are afraid. but we're not going to allow fear and hatred spread. And we need to stand up for each other, especially during the crisis like this that we are going through. Our government has created a Resilience BC, a network through which communities are helped to deal with the racism in their communities. Let me say this: we will not beat this virus by dividing our communities. We will only overcome this by uniting and looking out for each other. And I think if anybody sees any sign of racism anywhere, stand up and bring it to the authorities' attention, have it investigated, because this is the role that we can individually and collectively play to have a better, equal society going forward if we stand up for each other. Because it's someone else today, it could be you tomorrow. So that's not how we move forward or we deal with crisis like the crisis that we are facing today. It's only when we are united, when we are together, we understand each other, that we can overcome our challenges, that no matter how deep and how complex those challenges are. Our Canada is built on diversity. And it is only in Canada and British Columbia we have an example set all over the world for people to follow, that this is the place where we find unity in diversity. And it's working. And we should not allow few people fearmonger, few people blame others, few people trying to exploit the situation that we're in to try to promote their own agenda, the hidden agenda of racism. We should not let them do that. And we are all in it together. We need to fight this all together. And we have done it in the past. And we're going to overcome this together again this time.
Thank you for that, Minister. The next question is for you as well. Mark from Vancouver asks, what role can occupational health and safety associations play to assist employers with their COVID-19 responses and for the potential second wave in the fall?
Yeah, like I said before, and Al and I talked about this, health and safety associations are made up of a certain sector in our economy. And as I said before, I think there are about 13 of them all across the province. They represent different industries in different sectors. And they have collected a wealth of knowledge and expertise in health and safety for their members. And they're working very closely in support and cooperation with WorkSafeBC to come up with educational material, have resources available to their members so that the businesses who are their members can gain from the resources that they have and the skills and the other material that they may have. They take it for education of their members, and they are immensely benefited from those associations and their expertise, because they are expert in their fields, and that's why they are so beneficial. And I think if they follow in cooperation with WorkSafeBC's guidelines and incorporate provincial health officers' suggestions and guidelines and help their members, I think that's the way that we can avoid a second wave, or actually make sure that we deal with it how we deal with it today. I think that's what's going to determine how bad the second wave is. But that's where the Health and Safety Association come handy. They will be guiding their members. They will be supporting their members, and how tomorrow and next week and next month we behave and we act. And I think that's what's going to determine whether there is a second wave and how serious the second wave is. So that's why it's important to work with those associations if you're a member, and if you're not, follow the WorkSafeBC guidelines specific to your sector, specific to your business, and follow those instructions that are given by provincial health officers. So I think they are very, very beneficial if we could allow them to work with us.
Thank you, Minister. Jamie from Penticton asks, there is a lot of information out there regarding safety procedures for retail businesses. I would like to know, for a thrift store, the safety measures that should be taken for receiving and processing secondhand merchandise, and what would be the measures to put in place for the safety of staff and customers. So why don't we first of all hear from Al, and then the Minister can respond as well.
Okay, thank you. I think a good question. Certainly there is a lot of information on our website with respect to retail, and retail is very diverse. So one aspect of retail is secondhand or thrift stores, and I can appreciate how workers there they don't know where the materials, the merchandise that they're receiving, the furniture, whatever it is, where it's been or how it's been handled. So I think first and foremost, it's about going to disinfection procedures and protocols. So the owner, the employer, the workers in that thrift store need to make sure that they're disinfecting those that merchandise as best they can, following good disinfection protocols, and then back to a lot of good hand washing and ensuring that they're keeping themselves clean and not touching their face, and those basics that the PHO talks a lot about. So I would suggest that in that capacity, dealing in a thrift store, make sure that the disinfection, the sanitization protocols are really sound and solid in place.
Yeah, in addition to what Al have said, I think it's important not only for thrift stores, secondhand stores, but also for all businesses, is to work with their employees and make sure, because they have expertise as well, and they know what's good for them when it comes to health and safety of their own well-being, and work together and come up with a safety plan that is specific for your operation. Because as I said before, one size fits all isn't the answer in this particular case, or any case when we are talking about reopening our economy. It is a sector-specific guidelines that have been created by WorkSafeBC. Then within those, each sector have the businesses that are unique, they are diverse, they have their own needs. So they need to work with their employees, work if they have a union, work with their health and safety committees on their side if they have it, and then come up with a safety plan. Because it is important, not only that the workers must feel safe when they go to work, but also their customers have to have your trust and confidence that when they patronize your business, that their health and safety is protected as well. And that's how we are going to grow those businesses. As Dr. Bonnie Henry have said time and again, one thing that we don't want to do is open up businesses and having to have them shut them down again because they were not following the protocols, or we have seen the spread of COVID-19 because of ignoring some of those guidelines that have been available to them. So I think it's utmost important that the businesses follow those guidelines, devise with their own plans that is suitable for you in order to convince your customers and win their trust. It's that important.
Thank you, Minister. I think probably both of you will have something to respond to say in response to this question, but we'll start with Minister Bains. The question comes from Carla in Dawson Creek. The federal government, in a news release today, recommends that all Canadians wear non-medical masks. Why am I being told, as a teacher, not to wear one when I will be in contact with many people throughout my workday beginning June 1st?
Yeah, so I think it's a good question, and there's a lot of debate about this, a lot of questions that come our way, whether or not to wear masks. I think what I say is that we should follow Dr. Bonnie Henry's guidance, and it has been determined that there are better ways, which is like physical distancing, hand washing, sanitization of the area where people come in contact with each other, like doorknobs, like the shared lunchroom, the shared washrooms. Those are the places that we need to clean and ensure that they are sanitized on a regular basis. And again, wearing or not wearing a mask depends on the situation. There are guidelines created by WorkSafeBC. And if physical distancing is not possible, then you have an option to put mask on and gloves on. I think those guidelines are specified for each different business and sectors. And I think in this particular case, I would suggest It is your choice. If you feel like wearing masks, do you feel safe in there? You should wear one. And I think Dr. Bonnie Henry is very clear on this, that there's a better way of protecting yourself and others, which that I've just mentioned. But if you feel safer wearing a mask, then I think those people who feel that way, I think they should wear a mask.
Al, do you have anything to add?
I would just jump in and say that again on our WorkSafeBC website, you can find information on what we call the hierarchy of controls. And really what that speaks to is that there's a number of different control options to ensure that you maintain your safety. And they start with substitution or elimination of certain things. So a good example is in the restaurant industry, maybe they will substitute disposable plates and disposable things instead of having to wash the china or whatever the case may be. There's then engineering controls. You've seen those in grocery stores, the plexiglass barriers, the protective barriers that can be set up. Of course, there's all sorts of administrative controls that are spoken of, like physical distancing and keeping the cleanliness aspects of the workplace. And personal protective equipment, including masks, tends to be the last sort of control option that one should consider when all of those other options don't necessarily do it all. But you need to use all of those different types of controls in harmony with one another. And again, the real essence for wearing a mask is where you, as Mr. Bains has said, where you can't maintain that physical proximity, that physical distancing, and you need to be in sort of close intimate contact almost, if I can say it that way, with someone else in their breathing space, that you should both be wearing masks. If you're a customer or a worker in close proximity, then masks can be worn and should be worn. But you have to consider that proximity piece and look at all of those controls and blend them together where you may not need a mask and there are other options that are actually better.
Thank you both. This next question comes from Sonia in Greater Vancouver, and perhaps you could respond to this one, Al. The question is WorkSafeBC vetting every school district plan for their schools for June 1st, June 1st reopening, or are plans only being issued by the Ministry of Education? If that is the case, why is WorkSafe not part of the process?
So, yes, there's two pieces to this. First of all, the Ministry of Education, we are working very closely with the Ministry of Education at WorkSafeBC, and they have indicated to us that they are working on behalf of all of the districts collectively. So what they will put in place, they have given us their assurance that our guidelines and the information that we want to see in place in schools, that the PHO wants to see in schools, will be in place. So we are working closely with the ministry at that level as these materials and these processes and protocols roll out to the various districts. But once they're in place, WorkSafeBC as the inspector, having prevention officers out doing inspections, we can visit the individual school districts, ask them what they're doing, ask them if it's working, and ensure that they're following the advice, the direction of both ourselves, the PHO, and of course the ministry that has put this together. So we are involved, and we will continue to be involved.
Thank you, Al. Minister Bains, I'm hoping you can respond to the next question, and it's one that WorkSafe is hearing a lot. What's my employer's role in preventing me from coming into contact with COVID-19?
Good question. I would say that the employers, the workers, contractors, subcontractors, they all have shared responsibility to ensure that the COVID-19 virus is not spread at the workplace, that the workplace is free and safe for all of those who come to that operation. Employer is responsible for health and safety of their workers, and the workers have responsibility to ensure of their health and safety and people that work around them. But if there are more than one contractors, for example, those are the situations out there who are working. It's the responsibility of the owner of the operation to ensure that those contractors who come to their business, they follow the health and safety guidelines that they have through WorkSafeBC. Also, currently, that their safety plan is enforced, as is created by WorkSafeBC and in cooperation with provincial health officer. So it's a shared responsibility. And at the same time, employer have a responsibility to protect health and safety of their workplaces, of their workers. And if they have other people who come to their workplace to provide them contracting services, that they are still responsible for their employees and those contractors to ensure that they follow the health and safety guidelines and WorkSafeBC guidelines to deal with COVID-19, to ensure that no one comes to work if they show signs of COVID-19. And those who are there, that to make sure that they are protected from having, as we say, the physical distancing. And if physical distancing is not possible, then find other means to ensure that they are protected and other members are protected, and so that the COVID-19 is not spread from member to member.
Thanks, Harry. Linda from Nanaimo asks, is it not mandatory for hair salon staff to wear gloves besides a mask? Al, what's your response to that?
Yeah, I think I spoke a minute ago with respect to the hierarchy of controls around elimination, engineering controls, those administrative controls in place, and then the last control being the use of personal protective equipment, including gloves and masks. I think that in the case of hair salons, again, it's important that the cleanliness factor, the good personal hygiene factor comes into play there, where the stylist can certainly wash their hands on a frequent basis, use good soap and water and good washing technique, where they don't necessarily need to wear gloves. We also have in our guideline that the tools that they're using need to be sanitized between customers. The area needs to be clean between customers and sanitized as well. So there's a good level of cleanliness that way. So you may or may not be able to wear or be necessary to wear gloves. That is an option, and employers may direct workers to wear gloves, and that is fine as well, but it may not be necessary in all cases.
Thanks, Al. We have two more questions that came in advance, and then I'll turn to the questions that came in through Facebook Live. So the next question I'd like you to answer as well, Al, and that it comes from someone in Maple Ridge, and the question is, when I open for business and a WorkSafeBC officer shows up, what can I expect?
Good question. Our prevention officers will follow their standard protocols when they visit work sites and those work sites that are reopening. They introduce themselves and they want to speak to the employer representative, the representative of the employer or of management. And they also want to include workers in the inspection that they're going to do. And so they will speak to both parties. And really, it's about asking some good questions just to get a sense of, are they doing what they said they would do in their plan? Are they making sure that the workers are properly protected and the safeguards are in place? That's what it really is all about. Our prevention officers, we like to say that they offer consultation, education, and they recognize that they have an enforcement role as well. We're out there with this particular risk, trying to catch employers doing it right. We want employers to succeed with their workers and their workers to succeed, to make those workplaces safe and by extension feel safe for the public that they serve as well. Our officers recognize that some of these sectors, some of these businesses that we'll be going into, we've not visited before. We don't typically go into barber shops or hair salons, as an example, because they're not high-risk industries where we typically pay most of our attention to, where serious injuries happen on a regular basis. So when we go into these locations, many of these employers may have never seen us before. So it'll take some adjustment. They'll get to know our officer a little bit in that brief encounter. We want them to succeed. We want to help them improve if there are deficiencies. But in the case where they're ignoring what we need them to do, where they don't have a COVID safety plan, where they don't want to create one, then we can move down that enforcement road and hold them accountable to what they need to do.
Thanks, Al. I am going to now move to the questions that have come in on Facebook Live. There's quite a few of them. So the first question, if both of you could take a crack at answering it. If there's a lot of questions that have to do with inadequate PPE for teachers and support staff in schools. What is the plan for keeping staff and students safe in the schools as they gradually reopen? Why don't you, Al? No, Harry.
Okay. Well, I think what's important here is, as we have been saying earlier on, all along, is that we follow the guidelines created by provincial health officer. And I think it has been determined by Dr. Bonnie Henry is that there are much effective ways of preventing spread of this virus, which is like physical distancing, hand washing, sanitization, cleaning those areas that are commonly used by more than one person, and avoid crowding in certain area. And I think only when the self-distancing and those other methods are not applicable, look for the protective personal protective equipment such as masks and gloves. And I think WorkSafeBC have put those guidelines together, and I think they are very well thought out. And I think each individual businesses need to devise their own safety plan to ensure that their worker, their patrons are safe, and ensure that they are confident to come in and do the business with you. I think that's where I want to leave, and I think the Dr. Bonnie Henry has said time and again, if it's not possible to have self-distancing and utilize those methods that are much more effective, as I mentioned before, then you need to go non-medical mask, then that's your option, and you can do that.
Anything to add, Al?
I would just say Minister's answered it quite well. I would just add that there are a number of administrative type controls that the school districts can implement. And I haven't seen their plans, so I don't know specifically what they have in mind. But everything from what I would call traffic control, or how the students move through the school, to the distancing piece that's been spoken to covering materials and cleanliness aspects, to the hand washing on a very frequent basis, to the distancing, and of course then PPE may be a part of it as well. But I think that the caller, the question, they need to indeed work with their district, work with their school to ensure that they're part of developing and have some input into the COVID safety for their particular workplace.
Thanks, Al. The next question is for Minister Bains. Jenny from Facebook asks, who is monitoring nail salons?
I think, like we said, like all industries, WorkSafeBC have developed guidelines for each sector, and each sector have different businesses, and each business is required to devise their own safety plan. I might add, Al may want to add on to this. When they were devising these guidelines, they're based on 6-step plan, which means things like each operation must assess the risk at your workplace. How do they implement measures to reduce those risks? Then they develop policies around it, develop communication plan and training, monitor your workplace and update your plans as needed, assess and address risks from resuming operation. So I think that's the kind of thought that has gone behind when your operation, whether it's a hair salon, nail salons, and or the manufacturing facilities, each one of them must go through these steps and stages and then follow WorkSafeBC guidelines. But again, WorkSafeBC has stepped up their inspections, and they will be inspecting and doing random inspections out there, along with the provincial health authorities. And I might add, people, to give some comfort to people, entire last year, WorkSafeBC conducted about 10,000 inspections of workplaces. This year, in the first 6 months, they have already conducted over 15,000. So they have stepped up. There are additional officers assigned to answer your question, the line that we have given you earlier about the prevention line. So you can phone them and talk to them directly, and they will answer your question. I will repeat that line again, 1-888-621-7233. That's the line they can talk to, and they will guide you, and they will help you and help you provide resources if you need, and help you to alleviate your concerns.
The next question is for Al, and it kind of follows up on this one. Al, Cynthia Graham says, Mr. Johnson, I think WorkSafeBC's prevention officers will be inundated with calls and concerns from workers. How many prevention officers are on duty daily to investigate workplaces?
Great question, and we are busy. There is no doubt about it. We have approximately 325 prevention officers that are geographically assigned around the province. And on a daily basis, they are out there doing inspections and dealing with both their planned work as well as what we call response work to questions that come to them and issues that come to their attention. We also have the Health and Safety Information Center that right now we have approximately 30 prevention officers answering those calls. The volume, in fact, was very considerable on Tuesday, but has ramped down a little bit in the last 2 days. But those prevention officers are answering those questions. They're taking your calls, and they're providing some advice and direction. And we're able to manage the incoming volume at this point in time. Where we can't answer those questions or there's not a resolve to the issue, then we'll dispatch an officer to the work location as well. So right now there is a considerable volume out there, but we cannot be in every workplace. It's just impossible. To the earlier question as well, we cannot on our website have absolutely every occupation listed, but we're hoping that many occupations around the province, many workplaces around the province will see themselves in the materials we have on the website, the general principles and the detailed sector specific. In the case of nail salons, it comes under personal services. And so we're hoping you can see yourself there. So we're doing the best we can, and we will continue to do so. But right now we're able to manage the incoming calls and the volume, and our inspections are beginning.
Thanks, Al. The next question is for Minister Bains, and it's from Mario. Mario asks, it seems like the system is set to make rich people richer while the workers are still fighting to get a decent living wage. What are you doing with the struggle to set up paid sick days for workers from corporations?
Well, that's a very good question. I think the COVID-19 forced us as a society and as a government to look at areas that weren't looked at before. And I think as we saw in the chicken processing facilities, it was found that many workers went to work sick. And I understand that. And many people feel there are economic pressures on the workers. Many workers are paycheck to paycheck. And they ended up going to work when they shouldn't be, especially during the pandemic like this. And even in normal times, when you have flu, you go to work, you spread that flu to other workers, and the businesses hurt, their productivity suffers, and the people having to take time off and take an economic hit. And I think that's why the Premier have said that we are going to work with the federal government. The best thing to do is if we could reform the EI program, EI sick program. Right now, as you know, if you're sick, there is a 5 days waiting period, 1 week waiting period. Then the benefit level is only 55% of your wages, and up to a certain level. And I think we're asking the federal government, pandemic such as this is a national tragedy. it hits coast to coast to coast, and everyone, and every sector or sector is impacted by it. Therefore, we're saying that there should be a national solution. That's our priority, and the Premier has raised this with the Prime Minister and other of our colleagues across the province as well. So that's one way of dealing with this. But Premier have also said, if we do not get cooperation from the federal government, then we will go on our own. And we need to look at how do we to ensure that the workers are not forced to go to work because of economic reason. When they're sick, they should stay home, especially during pandemic situations like we are facing right now. And so there are a couple of ways to do it. One is to change the Employment Standard Act, whereas you can add certain days of paid sick days, employer paid, and or the other way to look at is WorkSafe. I think WorkSafe has accepted many claims already, that from workers who are impacted by COVID-19 and who have to take time off, because WorkSafeBC's mandate is that any illness or injury that arise out of the course of their employment is covered, and their wage losses are paid if they have to take time off. And I think that's one way of dealing with it through WorkSafeBC, and the other one is through changing the Employment Standard Act. So we're working very, very diligently on that area, and hopefully we will have a solution to that gap that exists right now for many people that are suffering as a result of that.
Thanks, Harry. Al, we have a question from Deborah on Facebook, and she asks, do you recommend people who are seniors with chronic illnesses who are vulnerable to COVID-19 return to work now also?
Tough question to ask. Again, general principles apply where if you're sick, if you're feeling sick, if you're demonstrating symptoms of illness, then you shouldn't be going into your workplace. But if you're feeling healthy, whether you're young or more senior, if you are healthy and your employer, and you are working, and your employer has put together a COVID safety plan, then yes, I think that is the situation that you could go into work, follow that plan, be a part of that plan, and contribute to your workplace. And that is what is out there, and the intention of what is to the COVID safety plan, the intention of that plan, and is to ensure your safety. So I think it's hard to answer that question specifically because there are so many different variables that could come into play. But absolutely, if you're feeling healthy, if you are healthy and you want to return to work and there are the proper COVID safety precautions in place, then your workplace would be welcoming, I'm sure.
Thank you, Al. Well, we have time for one more question. And we'll ask Minister Bains to take this one. It's from Lynn. How about requiring employers to have sign-off by employees that their reopen plans have been discussed and shared with the staff?
I think it's very important that what the WorkSafeBC have done is created guidelines, as I said earlier on, and each business must follow those guidelines and come up with their own safety plan for that particular workplace. And I think the best safety plan is when it's devised by both employer and the employees together. And I think we are asking employer to post that safety plan so the workers know what the safety plan looks like, whether they are following that safety plan or not. I think that's very, very important. And I think that's what the requirement is, that there's a safety plan following the guidelines of WorkSafeBC and the Provincial Health Office, that they're posted at the workplace so that people can see it, the workers can see it, and ensure that that plan is followed. And if they feel that it's not followed, then I have given the number before. I will repeat that again, that they should call that line. It's the WCB's prevention line, 1-888-621-7233, to ensure that you get the help that you need and you get clarification if there's any, that you talk to a prevention officer on that line and they will guide you. And but it is, again, like I said, it's up to the employer, up to the businesses to win the confidence and the trust of their customers. If they don't have that safety plan visible, accessible to the workers and their customers, the customers will have a lot of questions. And so it's not healthy, and it's not helpful to grow that business. So I think it's a self-interest. Number one, to keep their workers healthy. That will help their productivity, and also make sure that the customers see that safety plan. Then they have confidence to come in, and they will support that business. I think that's that important.
Thank you, Minister Bains. Well, that's all the time we have tonight for questions. I want to thank everyone who joined us on this virtual town hall, and everyone who sent us the questions. We really are all in this together, and it's together that we'll move forward in the safest way possible. Thank you very much, Minister Bains and Al Johnson, for taking the time to answer these very important questions. If you have further questions or comments about the government's response plan, please go to gov.bc.ca/COVID-19 survey. And as Dr. Henry says, be kind, be calm, and be safe, everyone. Thank you, and good night.